There we go. Welcome everybody to this CIVITAS webinar on mobility management and on behavior change theories for cycling promotion, more in particular. You should be able to see the presentation on my screen. As for the program, it's very simple. I am going to give you a very brief introduction to this webinar and to the CIVITAS initiative who organizes this webinar. And then I give the floor to Mr. Thomas Stokel, who will explain all about the behavior change theories that he applies in his campaign Love to Ride. It's a campaign that has been applied in several parts of the world, so I'm sure we will be able to learn a lot from him. And then afterwards, he will speak about 30 minutes. Afterwards, you will be able to ask questions, or if you have any particular challenges in your own work, you can discuss this with us, and hopefully you will end this webinar with a lot of new insights to promote cycling. So a brief word about the software that we are now using. You can see the box on the right hand side where all the controls are. You see this little box that has the basic features. So with the orange button, you can hide or unhide the control panel. With the microphone, you can mute or unmute yourself. For the moment, everyone is muted. So if you have a microphone and you speak into it, we can't hear you. But if you have any questions, then of course there is a procedure to unmute you. I will explain in a minute. With this button, you can switch the presentation to full screen. And the little hand button allows you to ask us to unmute you if you want to ask a question in the microphone. So I see for the moment there is already one raised hand. We will unmute you. It's Moika Ballant and Maribel Gomez. I see you've raised your hand. We will unmute you. So if you have a question, you can ask us now.
Hello, it's Monta here. I didn't mean to ask a question. I was just accidentally pressing the button.
Okay. Sorry. Okay, that's okay. That's okay. Okay. Maribel, do you have a question for us? I see your hand is raised.
Hello. No, I did the same.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
An accident.
So that's okay. So you can, if you click this button again, then the raised hand will go down. So you can click the button again, and then your hand will disappear normally, or I can just remove them. Yep, there we go. So this is how the system works. So after the presentation, you will be able to ask your questions through the microphone. For those of you who don't have a microphone, or if you already have some questions in mind during the presentation, you can always use the questions box where you can enter a question for the staff. So I will make sure that our presenter can also see this, and then we will treat these questions in the end. You can also see the attendee list. It's possible that you only see the title of this box, but if you click the plus sign in front of the title, then you will be able to see the entire box. So that's how it works. Oh, sorry. And there is also a handouts section, and there you can find the presentation of today, or you should be able to see the presentation of today. The presentation will also be on the CIVITAS website after the webinar ends. So for now, that's the explanation on how the software works. I hope everything is clear. Then a very short word about CIVITAS. So this webinar is organized by CIVITAS. It's a European funding program that gives funding to cities to implement measures on sustainable mobility. So here you can see all the cities that have received funding so far. For the moment, there are two active projects of cities, Civitas Dynamo and Civitas 2 Move 2. And there are also two support actions, Civitas Wiki and Civitas Capital, who organize supporting actions such as this webinar. There's also an international network of cities, the Civitas Forum Network, that all cities who want to engage themselves for sustainable mobility can join. And there are also local language networks because it's always easier to exchange experiences in your own language. And then we also have 10 thematic groups that you can find on the CIVITAS website. There are 10 different themes. And the thematic group that is organizing this webinar is the one on mobility management. Now, you can always follow these thematic groups by making an account on the CIVITAS website and joining the group. I'll give you a quick look on how the page looks. Here it is. So you have different tabs. You have interactions where you can share your work or ask a question. You can see who else is member of our group. You can see news that is related only to mobility management. You can see events that are related to mobility management. And of course, we have a lot of resources that are related to our topic. And these are measures that the CIVITAS cities have already conducted on mobility management. So if you're not a member yet, feel free to join. So I think this is a very valuable knowledge base for all. Okay. So after the end of this webinar, you're also very welcome to use this thematic group to further discuss what we've learned today about behavior change theories that work very well for you, or barriers that you encounter, or some kind of support that you need. And if you have any suggestions or questions on topics that you would like to learn more about, you can always email me and we'll see if we can organize something extra on this topic. So, are there any questions so far before we move on to our main speaker? If so, you can type a question or raise your hand. Okay, I don't see any questions appearing. So then we'll move on to the main presentation of this webinar. How can we apply behavior change theory to get more people riding bicycles? So we have with us Thomas Stockel, who is a social marketer, who has more than 12 years experience in designing behavior change programs, specifically to promote cycling. So he started in New Zealand, organizing the National Bike Week. Then he moved to the UK and he organized the Love to Ride campaign. And now he is joining us all the way from the United States. So basically for Thomas, this is a breakfast meeting. So we will now give the floor to Thomas.
Wonderful, thank you, Sarah. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I hope that today is useful and you learn some techniques that you can apply to your own work to make you more effective at encouraging people to ride bikes. I'm going to give a presentation today on how we're applying behavior change theory to cycling. So I'll tell you a little bit about the story of Love to Ride and how that came to be. I'll then talk about the main case study, which is a workplace cycle challenge. And of course, I'll talk about our behavior change framework and how that applies to Love to Ride and to this case study. And then, of course, we'll have some questions. I mean, first of all, I think results are very important to us. we've had a lot of participants around the world, a lot of non-cyclists, lots of cities and lots of countries. But the main thing is these numbers here are just, numbers. Those participants could be all regular riders. So who are we actually targeting here? And as you'll see here, we have about 50% of our participants being regular riders. But then the other 49%, about half, are non-cyclists and occasional cyclists. And those are our target audience in our campaigns. We want to get these non-cyclists to take up riding, and these occasional cyclists to ride more often and to start riding for transport. And this, I guess, compares to a lot of other cycling promotions like Ride to Work Day, which in many cases, in many countries, is 95, 80%, 90% regular riders. And so we really want to target these non-cyclists or new riders in our programming. And of course, we measure how often people are cycling when they start our programs, when they register, and how often they're cycling 3 months, 6 months, and a year later. This data here is actually 3 months data from a big study we did across the UK and Australia in 2013. And on average, across about 25 projects, we had 40%, so 2 in 5 non-cyclists now cycling once a week, and about 1 in 3 now cycling to work at least once a week. And we had about 82% continue cycling at some level, and 18% of non-cycling participants not cycling again at all in the 3-month period. And then, of course, the people who are riding but not commuting, about 1 in 3 again, 32%, took up cycling to work after 3 months. And so this is Love to Ride. This is our brand. We have a website and we have an app. Here are some shots of the website, and I'll actually take you and just show you briefly a few of the other sites. So here is one from Zagreb in Croatia. We have one in Boulder, Colorado. Here is London, of course, in England. We can use transport for London. Atlanta, Georgia, which is a very car-dominated city, but it is slowly but surely becoming more cycling friendly. And that's actually my new hometown. Milano, and you'll actually see here there's the language buttons, and of course this is in Italian, so the site can be fully translated. This is in the UK, and we've been working in the UK for a long time, so have lots of people in the UK, USA, etc. So let me show you my profile quickly so you can get a sense of how this works. This is my profile, and I can very easily log a ride here. Yesterday I biked 4.9 miles. So it becomes very easy to log one's rides. And we have these little messages here. A nice one, we hope you enjoyed your ride, and so on and so forth. Of course, the app connects with Strava and so forth. But the main project that we run is this workplace cycling challenge. So this is a website in Australia, and you'll see all these companies here from Australia, and they're all competing against each other in these different size categories. And so our main project that we run on Love to Ride is a workplace-based cycling challenge. So we'll go to a city like Adelaide, and we'll contact all these businesses and encourage them to join for free. And over a 3 or 4 week period, they will compete against each other. And they'll compete on these different league tables. And of course, the smaller companies, it is easy to get a higher percentage than if you're a larger company. And the reason that we have participation here, because the competition in this case, is to see which companies can get the highest percentage of their staff to ride a bike. And we only want them to ride a bike for just 10 minutes. So it is very easy to participate. And I will explain the behavior change theory behind why we say just 10 minutes in a moment. But we don't do it based on miles, because then all the regular riders, they tend to just ride further or to log the rides they're doing on a website. And that is not what we want the regular riders to do. We want the regular riders to become champions and encourage more people to try cycling, to give it a go. So this is one in London again. Here is a company profile page. So this is a company. They have a 93% participation, 68 staff out of 73 and 26 new riders. Here is another company in New York who had 46 new riders. That's pretty good. And so on and so forth. And you can see in this case, these people are in second place. So then we say, you're in second, get 11 more people to take first place. Yeah, so that gives you some idea of this workplace competition. Of course, there are prizes, and we send out emails to participants. This is interesting here because you see Marcus has encouraged 21 people to ride a bike. And Marcus, in this case, is also the organization champion. And of course, there are you can write messages to your team. And Tina's encouraged 26, Stuart's encouraged 22. So these are our heroes because they are helping to encourage more people to ride bicycles in their cities. So I have explained this challenge a little. Now we can look at the behavior change theory and how that applies to it. So we've been doing behavior change for a number of years. But about two years ago now, we took out a clean piece of paper and we said, let's look at all the latest theory on behavior change and how it applies to cycling. And so we came up with this framework. And the first part of the framework is understanding the user journey. So understanding that someone going from down here and thinking about cycling to trying it out to getting a bike to riding a little to riding more, riding regularly and riding to work is a process over time. And many of our campaigns say to these people who are not cycling, hey, ride to work. Just, take it up. You'll save money. It's good for you. It's good for the environment. It's easy. And for some people, that might be okay if they have a bike they used to ride a few years ago. For other people, though, there are a lot of steps on the way. And this going from here to here in one step is too far. And so that's why we have this important stage of change approach. And the first, the next part of the framework is understanding the barriers and the benefits at each of those stages, because this trial stage has different barriers. Well, first of all, has specific barriers to that stage. And so the barriers might be that they don't have access to a bike, or the weather might not be good to try it for 10 minutes. Or they fear, have this perception of safety, of course, is a really big barrier. But actually, it's worth now taking a moment to look at the importance of this trial stage in behavior change. It's one thing to tell people with marketing how wonderful cycling is, and it is another thing for them to experience it for themselves. And as I mentioned before, we get people to ride a bike for just 10 minutes as part of our challenge. And often people say to us, oh, but you want to encourage riding to work, why don't you make your challenges about cycling to work? And down the line, so we were in our June challenge in England, and in September we're doing a ride to work challenge with the same people. But we start down here with trying it for just 10 minutes, because if you say to someone, hey, Sarah, you should ride a bicycle, it's good for you, it's good for the environment, you'll love it. And they say, oh, no, I cannot ride a bike, it's too far, it's too hot, it's too dangerous. All these barriers that people have. And some of them are real, and some of them are perceived. And so what we want to do with the challenge is to say to people, oh, no, it's just 10 minutes. We're trying to beat the marketing team. They're on 25%. And if you ride, we'll be on 33%. Come on, it's just a bit of fun. We'll go around the car park or the park at lunchtime, and you can borrow my bike. Come on, it's just everyone's doing it. Give it a go. Come on. Oh, okay, I'll give it a go. And what happens when people actually ride a bike is they go, oh, actually, this isn't so bad. This is actually really easy and really fun. And they come off their bicycle after 10 minutes, physically feeling good. And there's a number of psychological switches that get switched at that point in time, because they don't identify as a cyclist, but they just rode the bike themselves. They had an old perception that cycling was hard or scary, and they just experienced it and found that actually it wasn't as bad as they thought it was. and they're physically feeling great. So they have, you know, all the endorphins pumping and this wonderful physical experience of enjoying a bicycle. So that is why this trial stage is important. That's why we see it as the first little wee step on this wider journey to encouraging cycling. And those barriers are different, obviously, than the barriers to getting a bike. So someone who has tried it out and now thinking about buying a bike, these are some of the barriers for them. They might not have the money, they might not know what type of bike to buy, etc. Riding to work, of course, again, has different barriers. And this concept of applying different barriers at different stages of change comes from community-based social marketing. There's a guy called Doug Mackenzie-Meyer, who you may have heard of, who is, in my opinion, a legend. He's excellent, and his work is very influential in our work of encouraging cycling. So that's community-based social marketing, and there's a very short PDF document that you can read, and it's about 4 pages, that explains very nicely this concept also. So on Love to Ride, obviously we want to use this theory. So we do a survey when you register asking how often do you ride a bike? And then based on your answers to that survey, if you say, I cycle regularly, you see a different survey than if you cycle not very often. And so we ask the non-cyclists, you know, hey, what benefits do you want to achieve? So we're getting people thinking about why they want to ride a bike. We also ask them what barriers they have to riding a bicycle. And this is very important because we can then speak directly to those barriers. So Love to Ride basically, you know, takes that survey data and will send you specific emails. So if you say, I have a flat tire, you'll get an email saying, hey, fix your flat tire in 10 minutes. Watch this video. If you say, I don't feel confident riding a bicycle, we'll point you to some tips. Or if we have a local site, we will point you to a local course on cycling with confidence. You'll see these on the right-hand side, this advertisement. And this one says free cycling courses, cycle in the city, and bike maintenance courses. And so this advertisement will show to specific people, because on the website we can set it up. Here is the title, here is the URL, here is the link, here is the image. And then we can do the targeting. So you'll see here we have these different ways that we can target. In this case, the barrier is my bike needs fixing up. So the next stage, of course, is applying different behavior change theories at different stages to overcome specific barriers. And so here, but of course we want to do that using technology, because then we can scale our approach. And creativity and fun are very important to engaging people. So here are some of the theories that we apply in our work, and I will talk briefly about these. An important note about behavior change theory is that it's a very simplified view of the complex world. So that linear kind of progression from thinking about it to trying it, this linear thing is not reality, but it does describe what generally happens and is useful to understand that. But some people will go from here, straight to the top very quickly. So let's look at a few of these now. The first one is that theory I mentioned before about giving people a positive experience. And that, of course, breaking down their old perceptions, creating new positive perceptions, that it's easy and it's fun, and that increases their likelihood of cycling. Yeah, maybe I can ride a bike. We then assist people to become more confident and capable commuter cyclists, and we get more people cycling. And we assist them using technology and linking the database, linking the people with local campaigns, local interventions is very important to us. And so that's why we allow our local partners to edit the website and to create local pages, to create those advertisements so that people in that area can access this technology and can access the services locally. And actually, it's worth mentioning as well here, if you are promoting car sharing and you say to someone, hey, you should car share to work, it's, you know, it's great, you'll save money, you get to talk to a friend, etc. And people say, oh, no, I cannot car share to work. I have to go to the gym some days, and some days I pick up my kids, and sometimes I go straight to the shops after work. And so they have all these barriers they perceive to car sharing. And by saying, hey, just try it just once, just give it a go, see how you feel. And they try it, and they go, actually, it was great. You know, I got to ride in with Fred, and we had a great chat, and I learned this about him. Maybe I can car share, you know, twice a week. And so it is a sort of a baby step in the right direction. So BMAT, this guy BJ Fogg, he's from Stanford's behavioral unit, and his has this thing called BMAT, which for a behavior to happen in a moment, you have to have the motivation to do the behavior, the ability to do the behavior, and a trigger. And all three of these things need to be present at the same time for this behavior to happen. And there might be a very small behavior. It's also worth thinking about overall behaviors like cycling to work are often made up of lots of little behaviors that happen all at the same time. So one behavior might be if you have a long way to, actually let's talk about something else. If you talk about going for a run, one of the sub-behaviors is to get your clothes ready and your shoes ready to go for a run. And if you get them ready the night before, that is a sub-behavior of a bigger behavior of running. And so to get someone to have their clothes ready for running, they need to have the motivation to do that, they need to have the ability to do that, and the trigger at the same time. So if they don't get a reminder in the evening to lay their clothes out ready to go for a run in the morning, they're not likely to do it. And you can look at other ones in regard of cycling. So if we say to somebody, hey, cycle to work, and the motivation for that is quite low because it's kind of scary, and they don't associate fun with cycling to work. And if their ability is hard for them to do that, so their ability is quite low because they may not have a bike or it might not be working at the moment, then the trigger, hey, cycle to work, it's cycle to work day, is not going to be very effective. Whereas if we say, hey, ride to work for 10 minutes, it's easy, it's fun, there's great prizes, come on, everybody's doing it, the motivation is now increased. Hey, you can borrow my bike, come to this try a bike event outside at lunch today. The ability is now easier, and these triggers are then more effective. Now you saw when I logged a ride before, we got these little messages that pop up. So it's a nice little reinforcement of this sub-behavior of logging your ride and saying what you did. And of course, we can use prizes and incentives. And it is worth mentioning a little about prizes and incentives. They're useful. They're still used today, obviously, but they're not the be-in and end-all. They are not, incentives alone, unfortunately, won't be an effective behavior change campaign, which is very unfortunate because it would be so much easier just to provide great incentives and get people to do everything we want them to do in the world. But unfortunately, human behavior is a little more complex. And of course, incentives will affect this motivation, but the ability and having the trigger at the right time, and of course, other factors, barriers, etc., come into play. So it's actually worth mentioning some of these other theories. In social marketing, we have a theory called make it easy, popular, and fun. And that is to say that if you make a behavior easy, if you make it popular, and you make it fun, then of course people will do the behavior. And this is where these theories overlap. These simplified views of the world overlap. So if something is popular and fun, well, that's probably quite motivational to do that. So that's the M for motivation in BMAT. And if something is easy to do, well, that's the ability in the BMAT as well. And so that makes sense. This baby steps is another interesting concept. It is also from BJ Fogg, and it basically is essentially this. If you want to get someone to do a behavior, often in their mind that behavior is a very big thing. It is a big mountain they have to climb. Even if it is a very small thing, like flossing your teeth. You're like, I cannot be bothered flossing my teeth. It's such a hassle. And so he says, if you want somebody to floss their teeth, just say to them, hey, just floss one tooth a night. Just do one. Just really quickly, one tooth, and you're done. And because, of course, what happens is you get the floss out, you wrap it around, you do one tooth, and you go, oh, I guess I'll do the other ones too, and you just quickly do the other ones. If you want to go for a run, he says, just put your running shoes on. Just put your running shoes on. Don't worry about going for a run, just put your running shoes on. And then you put them on, and you go, well, I guess, I may as well go for a run. I guess I'll go around the block. And so it is this idea of taking this mountaintop and just pointing people at the first step. Hey, look, just take one step. Because oftentimes there is obviously momentum that can come from, just taking that first step. And of course, this applies to cycling and a whole lot of other things. Getting people to take these baby steps. One of the other things we're doing at the moment is we are implementing badges, and we will suggest badges. We will recommend badges for you. So if you say you do not own a bicycle, we might recommend the Get a Bike badge. And there are 4 steps to this badge. One is to identify some local bike shops to go to. The next step is to read these tips on buying a bicycle so you're informed. And then, of course, visiting a bike shop and getting some prices and having a chat. And then the 4th step is to buy a bicycle. And it's we can take this thing, hey, buy a bike, which might seem like a big deal, and say, hey, just look at some bike shops on this page on the Love to Ride Milano website and see which bike shops you will go and visit. So we're trying to break these big behaviors down into little ones and, of course, create that momentum. Prompts are useful, and prompts is similar to this trigger, and it's also part of that community-based social marketing, another tool in that toolkit. Just 2 more finally. Gamification quickly is simply applying game mechanics, so making something fun, having teams, having prizes, having people compete against each other are all part of this game mechanics or gamification. And these initial small commitments are very interesting. There was a study done in which they interviewed some students at university about their perceptions towards the environment and how much they cared about the environment and wanted to help it. And then afterwards, they split them into 2 groups randomly and didn't tell them that at the end of the interview, one group got asked, hey, would you sign this pledge to say that you will pick up any rubbish, any litter that you see around campus and put it in a bin? And so some people said yes, and they said, yes, I will pick up any rubbish. My name is Thomas Stokel, will pick up any rubbish, blah, blah, blah. And if a commitment is written down, and if it is public so other people can see it, people are much more likely to do it than if they just say, oh yeah, I'll pick up some rubbish. And then, of course, the other half did not get asked that, or did not get the pledge. And then when they left the interview room, the researchers had put some rubbish out the door, and of course put a rubbish bin right next to the bit of rubbish. And the people who had signed the pledge were much more likely to pick up the rubbish and put it in the bin, even if they cared less about the environment. They weren't as bothered by it than other people. And so people who said, oh yeah, I'm really, really passionate about the environment, who didn't sign that pledge, were less likely to pick it up and put it in the bin. And so these initial small commitments are quite powerful, and we are experimenting with how we can get people to do that even more at the moment. So that is something I'm very interested in looking at now going forward. I think that's probably good. I mean, social norming, I could talk to many other things, but I think I've spoken for a while, so I would be interested in hearing any questions of clarification about what we do, or about the website, or about the challenge, and of course how these theories can be applied. So perhaps we could take some questions, Sarah, and then perhaps we could, after the questions, we could take some examples of how some situations or some projects in which we could have some brainstorming about how to apply these to that project.
Okay, thank you, Thomas. Well, we have a couple of questions that came in. Thomas, you should be able to see them too. Well, maybe we can start with the very first. So you spoke of this cycling legend in the beginning of your presentation.
Mm-hmm.
What was his name? Mackenzie?
Doug Mackenzie Moore. I think it's spelled, let me send this to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Did everyone see that or not? It's Doug Mackenzie Moore. I did just type it in and press submit, but
I can't see
perhaps
it pop up yet.
Oh, okay. Well, if you look at
everyone,
oh, is it?
Yeah, it has.
Oh, you saw it now? Okay, good.
Doug Mackenzie Moore. Okay.
I may have spelled his name wrong, but you should be able to put that into Google and find that, no problem.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then there are some questions about the organization of Left to Right. So Rumana Serker asks if you are planning any future projects in Asia, because she's from Bangladesh, and well, obviously such an initiative could also increase the number of cyclists there.
Great. I mean, we're very interested at the moment in bringing Left to Right to different countries. Just earlier this year, we launched in Italy and, of course, Croatia and America last year. So we're very, we have spent a lot of time and energy to invent a wheel. And, of course, now that the wheel is invented and it is working well, we want to roll the wheel in other countries and adapt it to those countries. So, I mean, I invite anybody to get in touch and let me know if they would like to bring Left to Right to their country or to their city, because we're very focused on doing just that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, but for the moment there are no plans for Asia yet, or
I mean, I guess at the moment we are focused on Europe, Australia, UK, and North America, but we only because we haven't had an email from somebody there saying, hey, can you come here? The same happened in Croatia, as they emailed us and said, hey, we want to bring it to Croatia, and same with Italy. So okay. I'm very keen to try it out.
Well, maybe Rumana can make it happen. And we also have some similar questions from Mr. Albert Hulsle. So the question is, how can you start a new Left to Right community? How does it work with the different languages? Is it free? How much does it cost?
Great. Yeah, no problem. So at the moment, you start a community by simply emailing us, and we will set up a website online for you. What we want to move towards is having basically so you can go online yourself and request the setup for your city. And so you will say, I'm this city. You will identify on Google Maps where that city is, because when people register, we ask them via Google where they live, and Google will assign them to that location on our system, and we'll assign them to the right website. And then, of course, we want people to be able to add in some local information. So where to ride in the city, and this will be free. So cities can request the site, they can edit about 5 pages and create a couple of those sort of advertisements, and where the local bike shops are, where the bike hire is, our local events that people can attend, and so that starts to localize it for people. And so, yeah, of course, that's all free. And then the way we get revenue to fund all this development and run these projects is we run challenges. And so, basically, when we run a challenge in a city, that is the thing that really boosts. That is the thing that really boosts the results, because we will work with local partners to engage companies or engage cyclists and get them to register. We'll help find prizes and send out emails and do marketing materials. And so there's quite a big variation in, how that can work, from like a DIY, so we don't do much delivery of the challenge, to pretty much we do everything involved in the challenge. So in a case in Sydney in Australia, that's probably a €60,000 project, and we have a local staff member on the ground. We're doing all the marketing materials, all the prizes, everything, and then contrast that to somewhere where it's €2,000 to €4,000, and we've got the website, and we're providing some training and assistance and best practice and lots of templates and emails and so forth at the other end of the scale, so that we can work with cities who have a big budget and are being ambitious and want to really get a great result. And of course, we're working with cities that don't have many resources financially, but are very passionate about bringing Love to Ride and doing this challenge and getting people cycling. So we want to have a big range in what we can do and what local partners can do. So that's how we get the revenue to run these projects and to spread it around the world.
Okay, so because that was also another question. So how is Love to Ride funded? But so it comes from the budgets of the cities.
Yeah, largely. I mean, there are some central government funding often for these projects. We've had some European funding. In America, it's been a combination of federal dollars and local money. In Australia, it's largely the cities, especially the bigger cities. They're spending millions on infrastructure and are really wanting to change the culture in their cities. And so this is, a relatively cheap project to get, to start getting people using this infrastructure. And so, yeah, this is, I mean, the main benefits for the cities, I guess, and the reason they're justifying the funding is threefold. One is to encourage more people to ride bicycles in their cities, and they have budget for this. Another is to communicate with riders in their cities, both existing riders to talk to them, because they of course register on the database, and they can then they can email them and sign them up to their newsletter. And of course also to communicate to these new riders and promote their bicycle map, promote their events, promote their cycling courses. And then the third reason, of course, is the data, that they have access to the survey data about who is riding and what barriers they have in their city, where in the city they would like to see improvements made, the GPS data, of course, from the app and from Moves. And so that is where the funding is coming from on that basis. And we've also had funding, of course, from health, it's particularly in the UK, and funding from air quality. So a lot of cities have smog issues, and this is a measure to help reduce that. So it's quite varied in that regard, but mainly I would say through the city funding.
Yeah. Okay. Another question from Neil Smith. Is the platform focused on workplaces, or can you also use it for households and schools?
Everyone can still see my screen, I take it?
Yes.
Great. So in many cases it is focused on workplaces, but we are experimenting at the moment with a team-based challenge, and of course you can set up the community and it can go on its own. But this is we did a team-based challenge, which meant that communities or groups of friends or families could register, and they got points for how many kilometers in this case they rode. So how much riding? So half the points were from riding, and the other half of the points were from encouraging. And so you got 50 points for getting an existing rider to ride a bicycle, and 300 points for getting a new rider to ride a bicycle. And so this was a chance for the existing riders to go, great, a points challenge, I want to ride a lot. And then for them to realize, oh, actually, I get more points if I encourage people to ride a bike. And so in this case, we have a league table full of these different teams. And so this is actually a cycling club. This is a group of women cyclists in Auckland. This is a division of a company. So this is a hybrid approach. But you can just set up the community and have it run, but really this challenge provides, it's a smaller time period over a month or so, and that provides a focus, which can be quite important to just put a spotlight on it during that time. It gets to social media during that time, and we're looking to, I guess, engage people in a couple, 2 or 3 specific times of the year, as opposed to being trying to hold people's attention all year round. Lots of people have lots of apps. I'm just sure we all do. And of course, people can come to Love to Ride anytime, and we have prize draws that run throughout the year, and of course tools that they can do throughout the year. But in terms of really pulling people in, we want to do that 2 or 3 times a year on specific behavior change goals. So I think that's a long way of answering that question, Neil.
Okay, thank you. And another question from Louis de Geest. How do you get companies enthusiastic about this kind of program? Because it costs them time and money, and they don't always feel the need to work on cycling or mobility.
Yeah, good point. I mean, we do produce a fact sheet which talks about the benefits of participating. We often go in the company to, so our marketing plan has 2 main focuses. One is existing riders, so people who are passionate about cycling already, and using them as our champions and encouraging them to register their companies. The second is to go to companies directly and work with HR managers, to environment officers, to some people have mobility staff who focus on mobility. Some people have climate change staff, and find what we would term a sympathetic heir, someone who also wants to see the same goal achieved from cycling. And so we have a conversation with these people, we send them an email, and we try and make it as easy as possible for them to participate in the challenge. So that is in essence what we want to do. So we have some tips here on getting staff involved, put up posters, target the regular cyclists first, announce it at some staff meetings. So we do want it to be easy. We also want to distribute the effort. So that's why we look at getting the regular cyclists on first, because they of course can help this one champion in the company to get their staff involved. And as I may have shown you before, some of these companies have sent messages to their staff saying, hey, we're doing great, keep up the good work, let's get some more people involved. So where was I? Boulder, yeah. No. Was that the question?
Yeah, that answers the question, thank you. Okay. We also have some people who raised their hand, so we will now give the floor to Maribel Gomez for a question. Maribel?
Maybe your microphone is not working?
No, we can't hear you, Maribel. No. No, that doesn't seem to work. Then we will move on to Albert Hulsle again, who also raised his hand. Yeah, Albert, you had a question?
Hello?
Hello.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Fine.
Yeah, I asked the question before in that chat. If I want to do this in Germany, is there the website available in German already, or does this have to be translated first and maybe gets more expensive?
Sure, great question. So we use a service called TransFX, and basically in the code we have this word here, champion FAQ, is in some special brackets, and that phrase will turn up on a website, and you just put in next to it the translation in German, and same for all these other words and phrases on the site. And we basically just set up the service, and then you or a friend or whoever you can invite some people who would like to see this brought to Germany to translate it yourselves. And so it doesn't have to cost any money. You don't have to pay us any money to do that. You can just make it happen. So yeah, does that answer your question, Albert?
Yes, and about the money, the question you asked already regarding the payment or pricing, you answered already that I can get the whole package if I have a lot of money, and you will come even with staff and so on. But if we don't have this and start little, can we start it for free, or is there a minimum that you need to cover the service or whatever?
Yeah. There's a minute for running a challenge, because it is quite involved to set it up on the website and to train you to, do the things to make it work mechanically. I mean, it doesn't have to be a big amount of money, 2,000 to 5,000 euros if you then do the work. But I mean, we're obviously very busy, and my staff are very busy, and so we unfortunately cannot justify doing a lot of work around the world for no money, because we would run out of money. So we just ask for a small amount of money if you want to do the work yourself. And of course, if you want us to really help get a great result, then of course you can pay more money and have more of our time. But we don't want money to be a barrier where possible. We want to, that's why we've made it, we're trying to reduce the cost as much as possible and have templates and so forth that makes it easy for it to be rolled out in a new city. Because, we obviously want to bring this project to the world, but we need to do that sustainably from a financial perspective.
Okay, thank you. And I don't know if there's other questions. I don't want to be rude.
Go ahead.
But I had another one. Yeah, so I also typed this in the chat just now. On the slide in your presentation about theory and tools, you gave a lot of different examples. And my question is, can I find this in that resources, tools for change, or from FOG, or on your website, or do you have maybe other resources that you can share? Maybe the list of literature that you used for your work and that you just want to share?
That's a good call. What I will do actually is I'll put on online after this presentation. I will put on a list of resources. It won't. So let me type this in here really quickly. getmorepeoplecycling.com. So I've put a link to our blog, and I will do a short blog post with some links to BJ Fogg and to CBSM. But I won't have many, so it won't look like a very scary reading list. I would probably just put 2 or 3 key ones in there that I would recommend everybody who's working to promote cycling to read. So thank you for that prompt, Albert. Good idea.
Yeah, and thank you for the answer and doing so, and your whole presentation.
Thank you, Albert. We will also put the link on the CIVITAS event page after the webinar, so you can find everything that has been mentioned here there. Okay, let's see. We have some more questions. There is a question from Marianne Söderholm, who says, do you find a difference in countries or cities that are already far ahead when it comes to cycling versus those that have less cycling policies and experience?
Yeah, really interesting. I mean, in cities that have a lot of cycling, so like Cambridge in England is a good example. They have about 1 in 3 people are traveling to work by bicycle, which is very good for England. Obviously we get higher numbers of people participating, but we get actually a really good result in cities that aren't as far ahead. Insofar as some of these cities, the cyclists in the cities really want to see cycling grow, and so they engage quite strongly in it. So Sydney in Australia is a very good example, which Sydney is quite a car-oriented city, but they had quite a few, 3,500 people, and about a third of them being new riders, which is pretty good, And at Atlanta, Georgia last year, as I mentioned, is a very car-oriented city. I think we had about 1,500 people and just under a quarter being new riders. So I think that the main difference is in the behavior change. So that's in terms of the engagement. In terms of how the percentage of those people who are taking up writing, it does tend towards the cities that have the better infrastructure. So in Atlanta, it was lower than it was in Cambridge, because people who discover cycling in Cambridge can very easily, enjoy cycling. Whereas in Atlanta, because there is not as much infrastructure, it is harder for some people in a shorter period of time to adopt the behavior. I mean, it's reminded me actually to do that analysis again, because we did a big study, it's probably 2 or even 3 years ago now, looking at the differences in cities, and based on, the biggest, based on like how hilly it was and so on and so forth. And it was actually looking at who the next 2% of the population are who are going to take up cycling. So we were thinking, if we're encouraging, the low-hanging fruit, who are the low-hanging fruit, so we can be more effective. But it ended up being very distributed, and actually there was a variety of people in all cities taking up cycling. But thank you for a reminder, Marianne. I will look at that research again. And
okay. Then we have a question from Jose Maria Diaz. So about Love to Write, there is a part for cities to join. Could you explain a little bit more how that works and how cities can be involved? Or is it also possible for an entire country to participate? So how does it work? How do you support local projects? How do you support national projects?
Yeah, great. I mean, we have local partners, and we have city partners. And so, for instance, London is somewhere here. London, of course, is our local partner in a city. And if we look at, where's the UK? Maybe it's here. No, I can put in here UK. And this is the country website. And so we have this relationship called parent and child. And this UK website is the parent website. And this is the child website. And so if we had a country partner, so in the case of Italy, actually, it's FIAB. And in the USA, we have People for Bikes. So we're working with a big national cycling organization here. And so they can help us to get messaging out to participants in the US. And same in the UK. So we're working with the CTC and Cycle Scheme and Bike Week. And their messaging, of course, can show up on these local websites. And so in terms of the role of the cities as a local partner, they help us to provide some local information on each site. They also help us to, secure any local prizes. I mean, the main way we interact with cities is during the projects, is during a challenge. So, we don't have a lot. We have, when it's just the community, once we have set up the community with the city, it just rolls on. Whereas when we're doing a project with the city, depending on what the roles are in the project, we work quite closely together and support each other. So, for example, in the case of London, they had the role of a challenge manager. It's the local staff member that we usually hire on like a 40-day contract to engage businesses, to engage cyclists, and they are the boots on the ground who are championing the challenge. In London's case, the city did that. Transport for London did that role. They had a staff member who was already working with businesses, and so it was a very natural fit for them to be the champion for this challenge. But in other cases, we do the marketing materials, we do the evaluation, and then in other cases, the city does the marketing materials and the city does the evaluation. So it is really, there's a lot of variation in how this can run. In all cases, we of course supply the templates, the raw materials, the proven methodologies, and of course we are updating these all the time, as I am doing at the moment. So yeah, that's I guess in a nutshell how we engage with cities, and we can certainly engage with whole countries, and we're very interested in doing that.
But it's perfectly possible to have a city website without there being a parent country website.
Yes, and that's true in the case of Zagreb at the moment. There is no Croatian website at the moment, but we're hoping to get one of those set up. But it's just the city in Croatia, and they've done the translation into Croatian here. And we're working with Sindikat Biciclista.
Okay. Then another question from Neil Smith. Have you actually dealt with running a challenge where infrastructure for cycling is not great? How do you do that?
Yeah, we have. I mean, there's a lot of, unfortunately, there's a lot of places in the world which still do not have good infrastructure. But when we've worked in over 100 cities, and there's this whole, in some countries it's not a problem, of course, but some countries there's this chicken and the egg thing with politicians. If more people cycled, we'd build the infrastructure. But of course, if you build the infrastructure, more people will cycle. And so I guess if you look at a curve, and you saw a growth, classic growth curve for cycling, so time at the bottom, and of course, the number of people cycling. What we want to do is get cities up the next little bit of the curve. So I mentioned before this idea of the next 2%. So who are the next 2% of people in your city who are going to take up cycling? And maybe they're friends with the people who are already cycling, or they work with people who are already cycling. And they may be, a little bit active already or want to be more healthy. And so we can target those people. And so that is why we say, who are the next 2%? Who's the next 1 person in 50 in your city that we can get to participate in a challenge and become a cyclist afterwards?
But very practically, how do you do that? Segment your target audience to find that 1 or 2%?
Well, and basically our research showed that they were everybody, and so the way we do that is we rely on the people who are already cycling. And so if you have 10 colleagues, you might be able to think now, who is the one of those 10 who I can encourage to ride a bicycle? And I go, my friend James, he is training for a big marathon run. I bet he is the most likely out of my colleagues to ride a bicycle. And so we wanted to get the low-hanging fruit, because then it goes up the curve, and then the politician can see that more people are cycling in the city, and they should invest in more infrastructure, and if they build it, they will come. So we have worked in cities that have very good infrastructure, and we've worked in cities that are still very early on in their cycling journey. I mean, Atlanta would be a classic example, because Atlanta is, there's I drive sometimes on a 16-lane highway, 8 lanes going each way. It's crazy here. It's crazy. But slowly but surely, Atlanta is becoming more cycling friendly, but it is usually the friends of the people who are already cycling who are taking it up, and we're providing a tool for people to encourage their friends to try cycling.
Okay. And then we have the question from Maribel that didn't work out earlier. Have you ever done a cycling promotion program for universities involving staff and students, or maybe even a competition between different universities in the same area?
We have done. Because universities usually participate in our city projects, we've only done a few university-specific ones. But since being in the US, we've had more interest from some universities in Georgia, and then University of California, Berkeley. I just sent a proposal to them on Monday, actually, outlining an approach. And I think that universities competing against each other is very interesting. I'm not sure if it is the same in Europe, but in America, as you may know, the universities are very competitive with each other. And so, Berkeley is keen to battle with their colleagues at Stanford. And so the way that normally works is we register in advance the different schools, and then we often have staff, history department staff, history department students, and then they all compete against each other in those categories. I think doing a team challenge in a university would also be very interesting. So yeah, it's another thing we're looking to do for sure. And I mean, there's a lot of possibilities at the moment, as you can imagine with us. So we're trying to be focused, but I'm very interested in piloting University Challenge in the fall this year, when the students are back at college, in Europe and of course in the US. So if someone's interested in doing that, please do get in touch.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Then I have one more question from Jao Bernardino. After having learned about all these behavior change theories that you talked about, have you really been able to improve your behavior change programs? Can you give examples of the impact of theory-based campaigns?
Yeah, sure. I mean, unfortunately and fortunately, we have always used some behavior change technique in what we've been doing since 2002, when we first did this in New Zealand, where I'm from. Now, I guess the key thing that's changed is more as the technology has got better to be able to target people more effectively, and that on the technology view has only been in for about 2 years since we did this. I mean, it's worth saying that the most powerful thing that we've done ever is the positive experience. And you'll find this in psychology, in self-help, this concept of experience being, 10 times more powerful than conceptually or thinking about doing something, getting people to actually experience it. That is why at the supermarket, they want you to taste their products, because if you taste it, it's one thing to say to you, this is tasty, it's delicious. It is another thing entirely to try it. And so that's why the thing we were successful at very early on is lowering the barriers to getting people to try cycling. I mean, I will say, in terms of much bigger studies, the evidence behind theory-based work is comprehensive. So you'll read, actually, Doug Mackenzie-Meyer has done a very good job in this PDF I'll post on our blog after this, of talking about a massive campaign in the US to encourage people to be more sustainable. Huge. And it was largely an information-based campaign. So they would give people leaflets and flyers on why they should change their light bulbs, how to change their light bulbs. But these are things alone were not enough. And inviting people to a workshop and talking through all these things was not enough to get people to do the behavior. And that is why those things like the pledges are important. The things like little reminders, the prompts to do the behaviors are very important. Having people in the community who are champions is another big thing. And so we have, we've been applying these things for years. So, it's a little too early. This refining we're doing with the extra target marketing and so forth is a little too early. And of course, as you can imagine, if we work in, say, 25 cities in a year, there's so many factors that go into the results of that city. Who the people were who were driving it, what the infrastructure is like in the city, what groups of cyclists did we get engaged? Did we get the lycra people? Did we get the cool people? There's a number of variants. So picking up out of only 50 cities, what the trying to distill down exactly what were the big impacts is quite tricky, as you can imagine. But the evidence behind applying behavior change theory is very comprehensive, and certainly the change that we're achieving generally is enough to say that theory-based approaches to changing behavior are effective. I think you might have muted your mic when the phone was ringing, Sarah.
All right, thank you. So yeah,
did I lose? Oh,
can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. I think the number of questions that we had shows that it was a very, very inspiring presentation. I can see no more questions, so if anyone has another question to ask, you can do it now. I see Maribel still has her hand up. Did you have another question, Maribel? Or someone else?
perhaps everyone is wondering why my voice is a little croaky today. Did you notice that, Sarah? My voice is a little croaky?
A little bit.
Yeah, the answer is karaoke.
So if you want to have a really nice cracky voice, you have to do karaoke. Okay, that's
it's not so much singing; it's screaming, very loud, of course. But anyway.
Well, that's a nice lesson to wrap up with. So I will just quickly give you all the link to our thematic group on CIVITAS. So since the beginning of our webinar, we already have 2 more members. So again, I invite you all to join. I will post the presentation, the recording, and a link to Thomas's blog on the thematic group page and on the event page on CIVITAS. There is one more question. What about the politicians and technicians in public administration? Have you got to involve them when you want to do a challenge? How do you do it? Where?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it does vary. Sometimes the officials who want to see this, the staff in the city who want to see this project run can just make it happen by getting, some approvals from the managers or whoever. In some cases, the politicians really want to get behind the project, and in some cases, they have no idea that it's even happening and they're doing other things. As far as the technicians, like the engineers, getting them involved is an aim of the project, because we want them to start cycling and experience what cycling is like in their city, and so they will be more mindful when designing infrastructure in their city to be conscious of cyclists. But it does depend on the city, how engaged the politicians are, and we obviously want the challenge to be a tool for people within the city municipality to encourage their colleagues to ride a bicycle, so that all the city staff can, become riders and want to see cycling improve in their city even more.
Okay. So, any more questions for Thomas or for us, for CIVITAS?
Good.
Well, then I thank you very much, Thomas, for your presentation, and thank you very much to all the attendees for your kind attention. And well, if you have any further questions, challenges, tips, you can always share them on the thematic group page. Thank you very much.